What do we want? Corporate takeover. When do we want it? Now.
Ho, ho, ho!
Hey guys, Nightfall here, and there's been some major breakthroughs and updates and just overall news on the whole Ubisoft situation. So let me butter you up with some good old Ubisoft lore. Ubisoft is a French-owned gaming studio owned by the Guillemot family. Very French, very demure. Oui, oui. So back in 2022, Tencent increased their stake in Ubisoft by acquiring 49.9% of the Guillemot Brothers Limited, which is the Ubisoft parent company. The reason behind that deal was to fend off a takeover from outside private equity firms such as Blackstone and KKR, which is not so unlike what's happening now, as hostile takeovers of the company have been threatened numerous times. So Tencent already has some incentive to step up to the plate and buy a majority stake in Ubisoft so they can protect their investment from 2 years ago. The terms of that deal were that Tencent's stake would be capped below 10%, which ended up being 9.2%, and it couldn't sell its shares for 5 years, which would be sometime in 2027. Sort of seemed like Ubisoft knew they were headed for a downward spiral when they made that deal. Fast forward to today, where Tencent is showing a lot of interest in becoming Ubisoft's single largest shareholder and could work with the Guillemot family on a potential buyout. So what does this mean for XDefiant? Well, realistically, Tencent is our best hope of this game surviving. A lot of people don't like Tencent or their business model when it comes to other games, but you can't argue the success that they've been able to produce. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Tencent, let me just name some of their more popular games that they're behind. PUBG Mobile, COD Mobile, and oh yeah, League of Legends. I would say those 3 games are doing pretty well for themselves. So they're no stranger to successful games and how to turn a game around. And maybe they even bring XDefiant Mobile, who knows? This is why the petition to save XDefiant is so important. It's likely not gonna ever change Ubisoft's mind and get them to overturn the decision to shut it down come June 3rd, but it could very well show Tencent or whoever buys out Ubisoft that there is an audience for this game and it is worth saving. And to all of the people that continue to think XDefiant was shut down because it was bad, or that it had no players, or that it had nobody buying anything, let me explain to you why none of that makes sense. First, let me direct your attention to a game called For Honor. At the time of recording this video, XDefiant has 149 viewers on Twitch, while For Honor has 156. And earlier in the day of recording this video, XDefiant actually had more viewers on Twitch than For Honor did. And For Honor just got a major update on December 5th. That was just a few days ago. In fact, if we take a look at Steam charts showing the number of people playing this game just on Steam alone, which no, it doesn't take into account the number of console players, but it should give us a pretty good idea of the game's overall player base. We can see that For Honor has been struggling just like XDefiant. In the last 30 days, For Honor has seen a peak player count on Steam of 3,800 players. So let's round that up to about 4,000, and if we triple that to try to account somewhat for the console players that aren't playing on Steam or PC, that means the peak player count in the last 30 days has been about 12,000 players. Sound familiar? And if we date this back over the last 5 years, going all the way back to December of 2019, which then includes 2020, when we were all locked inside playing any and every video game we can get our hands on, the highest peak player count was 13,000, which would be 36,000 approximately if you include console players. And that was August of 2020. And during that month, the average player count was less than half of that at 5,000, which if you triple that would be 15,000 players on average for the month. And for those of you tapping away in the comments right now about to say For Honor is an established game and makes Ubisoft money now, that tells me why it's not being shut down now. But what about when it first launched? Since XDefiant only made it 6 months before getting the announcement, let's look at For Honor's first 6 months, shall we? Released in February of 2017, For Honor had a peak player count of 45,000 players, whereas XDefiant had like 10 million. And then after that, it just fell off entirely, dropping all the way down to just under 2,000 players by July of 2017, which again, this is only Steam. So let's say we triple those numbers and we get 135,000 peak players down to 6,000. So why wasn't For Honor canceled and shut down? Well, let me tell you why. It's because Ubisoft wasn't being prepared to be bought out and they weren't liquidating assets in 2017. More and more, I can prove that XDefiant is just collateral damage and not being shut down because it isn't a good game. And here's some more information that I've gotten over the last few days from a couple more anonymous sources. So of course, with these being anonymous, we have to understand that this may or may not be accurate, so just take all this information with a grain of salt. Ubisoft supposedly just recently extended the lease agreement for their Google Cloud Services contract. So what does that mean? Well, it means that XDefiant is costing them basically nothing to run the game when it comes to servers. And in a previous video, I mentioned that player count for XDefiant was on the rise, and I've finally been provided with some numbers. Some actual, real numbers. Apparently, XDefiant never fell below 5,000 concurrent players across all platforms. I'm assuming that number is covering. That was about 2 weeks prior to the shutdown announcement. Recently, a few days before that same announcement, the player count had risen to an average of between 9,000 and 17,000 players, and even jumped up to 21,000 during the double XP week that we got for Thanksgiving. And at one point, XDefiant had a higher concurrent player count than Rainbow Six Siege did during the whole Thanksgiving week. Then remember back in the end of Season 1 where they gave us the daily login rewards? Player counts were hitting as high as 120,000 daily, and over 300,000 players claimed those login rewards. So there's 300,000 players interested in this game just waiting for good content, at minimum. And all of that content was coming in Season 3 and 4. And Season 3 was only 2 weeks away after we got that announcement. But people still want to come out and claim nobody played the game or nobody was interested. Get real. Then the recent Black Friday deals that we just got through, player spending was up almost 40%. And there are some people that may have seen that tactic as a cash grab from Ubisoft. Think about the timing. Those were Black Friday deals, meaning towards the end of November. And Ubisoft has already come out and said they're refunding any purchases made after November 3rd. So that means if you purchased X coins to buy some of those Black Friday deals, you're now being refunded that money, which just goes to show you even more so how this was all a last minute decision, and the whole Black Friday deal wasn't really a cash grab because they're giving all that money back. Also, there was supposedly another end of season daily login reward planned in just a few days after the shutdown announcement. So stop letting people tell you no one played this game, or that it wasn't good, or that people weren't spending money on the game. It had absolutely nothing to do with any of that. Outside of the Black Friday deals, if we had 300,000 players claiming daily login rewards at the end of Season 1, I think it's pretty safe to say that at minimum, 300,000 players bought one of the battle passes, which means that would equate to approximately $3 million in sales. And the number of players I've seen personally with one of the Founders Pack player cards or a paid cosmetic, I can guarantee you they made well over 3 million in sales. So if you don't like XDefiant, then just say that. But stop trying to gaslight people who did like it into thinking it wasn't good, or that it wasn't making money, or it didn't have a player base, because that's just bullshit. And for those of you that like XDefiant, I still encourage you to sign the petition, which you can find the link for that down in the description. At the time of recording this video, we have over 3,500 signatures in just a few days. So make sure to like this video, get the word out, subscribe to the channel, because I still have so much more XDefiant content to give you. Even if it does shut down, I'm planning on capturing everything about the game to preserve it the only way we can. But I have a feeling that this isn't the last of XDefiant.